Everyone loves the idea of the state-of-the-art house, but if you decide to have your new house built from scratch, you might expect to wait for months, if not years, before the building is completed. Unless that's if you order yourself a prefab building. Welcome to Northstone Shelters Limited. Northstone Shelter Limited is committed to providing solutions to the housing challenges in Nigeria. Northstone Shelters Limited is introducing creativity to the housing sector under the auspices of the Managing Director and Chief Executive Officer, Engineer Olusegun Olubodun.
Northstone Shelters Limited is a consortium of highly skilled professionals. We are committed to providing high-quality shelter solutions to the Nigerian populace and to West Africa in general. When I mean a consortium of highly skilled professionals, I mean the coming together of great professionals who are certified engineers, architects, and civil engineers, mechanical engineers, electrical engineers, and all other artisans that you can phantom that are required for the delivery of quality shelter solutions to the Nigerian populace, and we look towards Africa also in general. First off, I am being a civil engineer. I understand the challenges that people go through in terms of getting accommodation and shelters delivered in a very quick period. In the country we are right now, we understand there are a lot of challenges that comes along with building a structure for yourself. So we looked at what was going on out there in developed countries, and we decided to replicate a similar thing in here in Nigeria. You discover that if you want to build in Nigeria, it takes a lot more cumbersome process. We've got a lot of suppliers who are not honest, and they take a lot of time in delivering your products. So the requirements to build up a brick and mortar structure are quite much. You need the cement, the sand, the water, and every other materials that you can phantom to put up a quality structure. In terms of getting all those materials, you need to procure it from several vendors. And so coming together of bringing all those vendors together and having them delivering your products or materials that you require for providing a very quality accommodation within a very short period of time, it's a challenge in Nigeria. They come up with all manner of excuses. They come up with some reasons why it can't be done and why it shouldn't be done. So we looked at bridging that gap between who wants an accommodation set up within a very short period and on time, and having a solution that can be able to cater for that within a very short period of time. So that was what inspired the incorporation of Northstone Shelters Limited. And we came together as professionals. We had a meeting. We looked at the pitfalls in Nigerian construction industry at the moment. Then we looked at all the things that probably are affecting and causing all these problems to exist in the first place. So a holistic view of all these issues brought about the establishment of a prefabricated housing company, such that we can reach out to people who want some very fast and quick housing structure within a short period of time, and not like giving away quality in terms of delivery. How well we render a lot of service. Just like I said to you earlier, we are coming together of several professionals. So when several professionals come together to form an organization, you understand that the services rendered are always diverse. And when I mean diverse services, we have like the electrical professionals who are quite good in their own field. We have a team of architectural guys who are also quite good in their own field, urban and regional planners, quantity surveyors, and civil engineers, mechanical engineers, and all that. So coming together of all these professionals in order to create a fast and sustainable housing solution to the Nigerian populace and West Africa in general, you realize that we have the capacity to render a whole lot of service to people, but we have solely decided to major on prefabricated solutions, but not taking away the fact that we can also render any of our services which affects the coming together of each professionals. So as a professional, if my profession is, take for instance, mechanical, civil, or electrical, or architecture, we can equally still render the service that we are trained for. But our goal is to come together and create a fast and sustainable housing solution to the Nigerian populace.
The company is highly equipped with young dynamic management and technical team to execute any given task in its field of endeavors.
Well, for privacy's sake, it may not be very too good to mention the exact clients that has made purchases for a certain material or a certain product. But for us, we've done quite a lot in terms of making constructions in the Nigerian housing sector. We've played our roles, and we're still playing even till this moment. We feel that for clients' privacy, it wouldn't be right for us to start mentioning the exact client, where he or she has bought, and what the client has bought from us. So for that reason, we may not be able to mention on this program, but in terms of delivering fast and sustainable housing solutions to Nigerian populace, we've got like a very evident list of people that can be able to attest to the service that we've rendered.
These engineers' buildings are the architectural equivalent of flat pack container and can be erected in as little as 5 days. So how do they do it?
Well, it depends on the size. There are a lot of factors to be considered. It depends on the size, one. Then two, the topography of the area that you're intending to construct. Because naturally we prepare a raft foundation, just like a small base or foundation for us to have a cabin position on it. So but the dimension and the internal partitions required in the prefabricated structure would determine the time it takes. Naturally, for an open plan cabin, if we are taking, for instance, maybe like 28 square meter or 35 square meter thereabout, it takes us about 6 hours to put it together. And putting this together in 6 hours, we believe we can be able to meet up with any rapid requirements of housing that anyone may have. And we have several number of teams, because we share our guys and our employees into teams. So these teams can be able to put up a structure within 6 hours max. So if we put up a structure within 6 hours, if we have like 100 teams or like 200 teams, you can imagine how many number of structures that we can be able to put up within a very short period of time.
A survey conducted by the African Development Bank on developers indicates that 60% of the cost of houses goes towards construction. Out of this, 70% arises from materials and 30% being attributed to labor cost. These are the kind of costs that Northstone Shelters Limited intends to bring down significantly when it comes to availing more houses into the Nigerian market using their technology.
Owning a prefabricated building is just one of the most easiest things. It's just like going to the market and buying exactly what you want and bringing it into your home. First off, you need to have like a small plot of land or a place you wish to position it. The plot of land or where you wish to position it should be in alignment with the size that you are interested in having. Take for instance, if you want a size of about 500 square meter, you cannot put a size of 500 square meter prefab accommodation on a 200 square meter plot of land. So the alignment of your plot of land needs to be there. You've got a plot of land which is okay enough, or a space, or a temporary space, anyone at all. Then you need to have a drawing. If you don't have a drawing, don't worry, we can always arrange that to you. Our process flow is the client calls and he or she explains what are his desires. You agree with me that some people want a large sitting room, some want a very small room, some want a very large living room, some they just want a very large bathroom, some just want a large kitchenette. So the requirements of people varies per their exposure. So I would say immediately you call us and you tell us what exactly are your needs or what you feel you want to have. The next thing we do is we convert that into an architectural drawing. Then we send the architectural drawing to you. Then you have a look at it. If you have some few modifications or corrections to make, then you make the corrections and you communicate back to us. So having communicated back to us, we manufacture exactly according to what is on the architectural drawing. Then we send you a quote. Then sending you a quote, the next thing you get your quote, you make the payment, and voila, you already have your home. So it's a very easy process of having a prefabricated accommodation. What we just come to do is we come for site inspection to ensure that the topography of your area is quite good enough to support the structure that you're intending to have on it. And once we're able to get that done, it's just less than a day job. We put up the assemblies of your prefabricated structure. Those things comes in modules, and because it comes in modules, it's always very easy and fast to put up and assemble within a very short period of time. Most of the frequently asked questions that customers ask is, oh, this is prefab. Is it strong enough? Are you sure I won't be sleeping in my room? Then I'll just have some wind come take me away to the next compound. Then you find out some people start asking you, I really want to pound yam. It's part of my culture. I need to pound yam inside my accommodation. Can I be able to pound yam really in my accommodation? Then people ask you, how long does it last? And people ask you, what is the warranty on it? And sometimes people often ask you, are you sure it's difficult? It's not very easy to break into it. So those are some of the questions that we've come across from people. But the answers are, if you permit me in this program, I feel, let's take for instance, you have a brick and mortar structure right now. You only need one or two hits from a very good sledgehammer to break into a brick and mortar structure, because it is a rigid structure. And when you hit it once, twice, the next thing, the bricks start giving way because it is already very dry. But when we compare it to prefabricated solutions, you have a sandwich panel solution. You have steel on the first part. You have polyurethane insulation on the second part. Then you have fiber on the third part. Then you have steel on the other part to make it look good. Take for instance, I have a sledgehammer. If I'm trying to break into steel, first off, the noise the sledgehammer produce in contact with the steel is a very loud noise that if you have security guard around, of course, they would be able to hear. Then number two, let's take for instance, you are successful in breaking the first layer, which is the steel. You have to contend with the insulation, which is the polyurethane insulation. Then let's take for instance, you're done in breaking through the polystyrene insulation. Then you have to also contend with the fiber. Then you now get to the next steel. So it's like a 3-4 layer set of security measures as against having a brick solution which you can just use a sledgehammer and break into it. In terms of pounding in it, the product can be able to support about 250 kilograms per square meter. In terms of the weight it supports. So if you have 250 kilograms, that's equating about 5 bags of cement per square meter. That is what you can put on 1 square meter and it will still remain standing. It doesn't mean it won't continue to stand if you put something more, but it's just the minimum requirement. In terms of speed, it can be able to withstand about 120 kilometers wind speed. When wind speed is measured, a speed that is moving at 120 kilometers per hour, the cabin can be able to withstand that kind of pressure. So aside from that, you see, when you position it on a raft foundation, we also have anchors that you can use to anchor it on the ground. So if we can have a keke napep, for instance, and drive it, and we'll be very sure and certain that it's going to withstand the wind speed of a certain kilometers per hour, because when it's static, same thing applies to this because it's much and quite heavier than a tricycle. So if you have a tricycle and you're not scared that the wind is going to throw you away, and you have a cabin which is made into an accommodation, then you're scared, then I feel it's just some level of information that Nigerians have not gotten yet. Then in terms of the lifespan, the products, every product has like a limit and a lifespan, but it all depends on the maintenance that you give to the product. Take for instance, you can have a phone that you bought today. If you're constantly hitting the phone on the floor, within a short period of time, you're going to record some very great grievous damages on the phone, either on the screen or the components working in it. So the same thing applies to building. You see most structures that Nigerians construct within 2 years, they start looking like a 10-year structure already, because our maintenance culture is quite behind and we are not getting it right in terms of maintenance. So, but in terms of prefabricated structure, it requires little or less maintenance aside from washing. So I think the maintenance culture is what's really going to answer the problem, the question of how long it could last.
Northstone Shelters is poised to complement government's effort to bridge infrastructural deficit through ingenious ways to tackle funding and other challenges in the housing sector, as government strategizes on ways to develop favorable housing policies.
I feel the government has a major role to play in almost every society. When something new is coming up, most of the people that are really accepting the product right now are the government, that requires like some very temporary outfits for military, for paramilitary of outfits and all that. But I feel that in terms of supporting us as an organization and the few of us that are actually into prefabricated solution in Nigeria, I feel Nigerian government first off should try as much as possible to provide us with basic electricity. I mean, round-the-clock electricity is one of the very big challenges that we're facing as an organization, because you have to run generating sets 24/7 in terms of manufacturing and putting together all those things. So that takes some addition and adds a lot to the cost of the prefabricated structure. If, for instance, you are not running with fuel or diesel or any form of generating sets, if you're running on PHCN, it's quite easy for you, and the cost of having these things done will be much cheaper, and to be like about 20% cheaper if you're not running on generating set. But because there's no, the lighting situation of the country has been very erratic, and we're not getting it right as relates to the electricity of the country at the moment. It affects a lot of manufacturers, and as such we'll be dependent on other economies where their lights are quite stable, so we can import from them and bring it to the country, then we'll start assembling locally, which I don't feel is the best way we can do it. We have the funds to purchase the machineries, but when we think about the underlying costs that attach to these machineries that we're buying, it becomes a problem bringing them into the country. I also think that the Nigerian government should look seriously and critically into the area of manufacturing companies bringing in machineries. You see, one thing we should look at is we should look at the end product, not the immediate. Nigerian government, whatever you're bringing into the country, the custom, first of all, charges you the custom external tariff that is due on that product. Then aside from charging you the custom external tariff, they also take some other charges off you. That alone has put a lot of pressures on your shoulders. If Nigerian governments would say, okay, you're bringing in machineries, okay, we're not charging you the custom external tariff, knowing that these machineries cannot be operated on its own. You need people, it's going to create job. As against bringing in finished products, bring in machineries, then take it at 0% custom external tariff. It creates a lot of jobs, and it takes the responsibility of paying all these charges and bills off the importer, knowing that these machineries cannot be used elsewhere aside from Nigeria. If it comes to Nigerian waters and it's been in Nigerian ports, the only thing we can all do is to wait a while within that period, you discover that the person is eager to also start manufacturing, because nobody will go all the way to Germany, China, Belgium, go and buy a particular machine, then come and stock it at the back of your room. No, you would want to start manufacturing as soon as possible. So I feel Nigerian government can give some moratorium to prospective importers or people who want to go into manufacturing at full scale. Let them bring in these machineries at almost a free cost. Then let's look at the bigger picture. The number of persons it's going to employ and the number of tax it's going to keep paying concurrently for a period of time. So with this, we can be able to get it right, and we can encourage a lot more importers to import machineries and bring it into the country, thereby creating employment and passive income.